Welcome to Coding with Tom. Today we're going to be adding a new level of nest to our restaurants app where we're going to be displaying inside of the categories the restaurants, and inside the restaurants we're going to be displaying the ratings. We're also going to be doing a post request to add a rating to that restaurant and updating immediately our UI using Combine. This time we're going to have a new endpoint, a post. Here we're going to pass the same URL plus the category ID and the restaurant ID. Then in the body, in the JSON body, it's just the score, which is a string, and a comment. When we pass it, we'll get back the entire categories. And if you see calling the restaurant's get endpoint, we have the same thing. Notice that our categories now have a category ID. And we'll get our ratings, which have a score, the comment, and the rating. Notice all of them are strings. So first thing, let's update our model. And now let's go to the service and do some modifications to it. So now what we are doing is we're storing the categories that we are fetching in the restaurant service adapter. With the in the get, I haven't changed anything. I just moved everything to a function where we receive the data, we decode it from the JSON, and we pass it to our categories. Since the post request will also return the categories data, I'm doing the same here. Notice the difference here. I'm adding the category ID in the restaurant ID. I'm adding an HTTP body. I'm adding a value to the header, which is application JSON content type. You can compare it with Postman, where the header is also passed in the post. And I'm actually missing the verb. That's a bit. Now we're not gonna be updating directly the data, the categories that the scenes are gonna be retrieving. We're gonna use for that a publisher, and for that we're gonna need Combine. Here what I'm doing is I'm creating a current value subject publisher. It's going to be internal. The role of this publisher is to store the latest value assigned to it and then pass any updates to the subscribers. Our categories publisher is going to be this current subject category. Every time we update our categories, we update the publisher. Now, every other scene that listens to category changes will listen to this publisher instead of having to pass a completion handler to each of the functions that update the data. With this, let's update our scenes before adding the rating functionality. So here what I'm doing is I'm creating a cancelo, which is we need to store one when we subscribe to a publisher. So here what I'm doing is creating a map publisher that grabs the categories from the service. Each category we transform into a row item, which then has children. That's also the restaurants, which we also transfer to row item. And here in the children, which is nil for now, it's where we're going to pass another array of row items, which are going to be the ratings. We're going to do that later, but let's add here the extension for the rating. Now let's go to the categories view, update this, and see how it looks. To avoid having to have this file process a lot, because with SwiftUI, the compiler always has to worry about this, we're going to move this to another file. Everything still seems to be working fine. Now let's move on to add the first. Let's add the rating cell. So if the service answers back a rating, we're gonna display it, and then we'll add the ability to rate. Notice here the check that I have to do. If there are ratings, then I will be doing the map. If not, I need to pass nil. If I were not to do this and I just pass an empty array, I will be getting this disclosure for every single restaurant, even if it didn't have ratings. Try running again. Here we have it. We have right now empty rows for the 2 restaurants that have a rating. For Island Grill and Grandma Suites, we just have a simple comment. Now let's create the cell to show the stars and the comment. And the score view is I'm going to be using it in the row, and the rating view, I'm going to create this in another result view. We're going to be using SF symbols, so star field, and the star, which is just a border color. Let's also add a foreground color for the stars, and there we have it. This is our score view. Here we have our rating row. Let's move the alignment here. Okay, there we have our rating. Now the only thing that we're missing is when we swipe here and I tap here, right now we're just generating this empty response. Instead of this, we're gonna be making a view appear on top of this to comment and rate the restaurant. Oh yeah, and since that view is gonna be the one doing the rating, we're not gonna be passing the comment and everything. We're gonna actually depend on that view to update the service. Because we're gonna be listening to the publisher, we're gonna get notified of that change. Now, for our cancel and rate, since we're going to be a view that is presented, we're going to need two things. First, we're going to be passed a variable that we're going to be changing if we are presented or not. And we also need the ID of the restaurant that we are rating. I'm not going to present this modally since this is not going to take up all of the screen. So I could create a view modifier, but for this time, I'm just going to create a background view, a dim background view for this. Let's try and see. Yes, our score view reacts with according to this. Okay, and that's, yeah, this should be our rating view. Now let's add this one to our categories view. So we're gonna need to do some changing here. We have our two ratings. Try rating this one. Here we have our view. We can address this dim area going to the top later. I'm going to tap in the dim area. It goes away. Cancel, same happens. And now let's try assigning a rating here. Okay, little change here. This actually doesn't need to be a binding variable. The restaurant ID can be a let constant, since we're not changing that ID. Here in categories, yes, we're not passing this. And a big difference here, what was happening is there was nothing wrong with the service, it's just we're using content shape. So the view behind was actually was receiving all of the gestures. What we needed to add here was a clip shape. Let's try running this. Let's create this one. Let's put a 5-star and tap on rate. And here we have it. And that was all for today. As you see, Combine and SwiftUI work very well hand in hand. We can separate responsibilities to other classes that call services that update our source of truth. And thanks to the publishers, the scenes don't have to change anything. They're just notified of the update and they respond. NestedList in SwiftUI with the children attribute is easy. It recursively looks for children inside the children and so on. There was no need to change our implementation, just add our view model and the role, and nothing else has to be done to the scene. Hope you liked it. Bye.